Today I will be talking about some of Paul Graham's tweets that he tweeted about Tesla this morning. If you don't know who Paul Graham is, he is the founder of Y Combinator. It's a startup incubator based in Silicon Valley, who has incubated a bunch of startups, probably in the order of over 1,000, Airbnb, Dropbox, etc. He's a very influential thinker, and he made some interesting points via tweets I wanted to share regarding Tesla and think through them. So here's the first tweet that he shared. He said, "The two axioms that explain your experience with devices that contain software, except Tesla's. Number one, it takes extraordinary effort to make software that's not horribly difficult to use. And number two, companies whose main focus isn't software don't expend extraordinary effort on it." So basically what he's saying is that basically if you're a company and you're not a software company, then you're not going to be able to make software very well, because software is hard, and it's hard, extremely difficult to make good software that's easy to use. And he kind of shares some other subtweets regarding different just like software. I guess he has an Audi, and his Audi car has terrible software, or printer and stuff. And then he replies to his tweet saying, arguably the reason Tesla is an exception is that because it is actually a software company. So he's basically saying that, Tesla has great software, and it's easy to use, and people think that Tesla is a car company, but it's probably, more of a software company, or it could be a hybrid, but it's hard to say Tesla isn't a software company. So this was this morning at 3, and then later on at 11 a.m. he tweets this. He says, "The old car companies think what separates them from Tesla is that Teslas are electric, but they're also separated by the fact that Teslas are software, and that they will discover is an unbridgeable gulf." So in this tweet, he's basically saying that these car companies are kind of missing the point. They think Tesla is an electric car company, but Paul Graham is saying that besides being electric, what's maybe even a bigger bridge to gulf is that Tesla is a software company, and all these other car companies are not software companies, and they're not going to be able to make good software, basically. And because of that, the Tesla experience is going to be basically, it won't even be years. It'll be basically light years ahead, meaning they won't be able to bridge that gap, because they're not software companies able to do so. So one question is okay, how about these other software companies like Google or Apple or Nvidia or Intel, Mobileye, etc.? What if they provide the software, and these car companies become like hardware players, kind of like in Android, where Google provides the software, and Samsung and others are just hardware device makers in a sense. It's not completely like that, but one person basically says to that extent, who's going to be like the Android to Tesla's Apple? So Apple, meaning Tesla, would control the whole stack, basically, from device to software to everything. But maybe there could be a competitor platform, basically. And the software company can provide the software, and the car companies provide the hardware. But Paul Graham is saying there's no reason to believe that there will be one, meaning an Android, in the car section. Google was focused on Android to prevent Apple cutting them off upstream. No one has that motivation in car software. So basically, I take that as saying that Google was very scared and paranoid, and rightly so, that if they did not have a competing platform to Apple, that Apple would be too dominant and on the device, and that Google would be basically vulnerable, where Apple could shut them off from on the device, Google will be basically at the mercy of Apple, and because of that, Google was forced to basically focus on Android to keep Apple from basically monopolizing the mobile device industry. And so Paul Graham is saying basically, you know, yeah, it's like maybe who's going to do that? There isn't that same motivation with cars. I'm not sure. Perhaps there could be something, but he makes an interesting point. This other guy, he basically says that's not true. Paul Graham, the media thinks it, but VW CEO knows very well that Tesla's advantage is software. And then the VW CEO saying some of our competitors have much more speed when it comes to software deployment and capabilities where we are still lagging behind. And Paul Graham basically says, but the difference isn't merely speed. Tesla software is good. All other in-car software I've seen is appallingly bad. So he's basically saying, yeah, it's not just speed. It's, basically the whole software, like all aspects of the software. Another tweet by Paul Graham later in the afternoon. He says, bizarre discovery. Tesla has a fleet of haters who must search for tweets mentioning the company in order to reply to them. I've seen plenty of haters before, but never such proactive ones. Who are they? Car dealers? People who shorted the stock? Bots? Yeah, so, there's this guy who tweets the LA Times story. We kind of profiled some of the shorts swarming Twitter. And Paul Graham says, wow, I had no idea. Conspiracy theorists and short sellers have converged. How very strange. Are there any other companies that have this sort of anti-apostasy? Yeah, and then Patrick McKenzie's Patio 11, he's well known in the developer community. He basically says, I think this is partially non-traditional minimum sophistication short sellers, many of whom grew up on Bitcoin, where the social reality of the ticker is the only reality, and partially the countercult of personality. I think people underestimate the second part. Paul Graham says, they went from crypto to shorting public companies. Wouldn't crypto people find that boring and old-fashioned? Patrick McKenzie says, they probably would, except for product innovations at one broker. Robinhood specifically is acting as a bridge from crypto as gambling to traditional finance as gambling. Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting, Paul Graham is basically now bringing up like, hey, who's a Twitter mob that's basically, basically hating on Tesla online. And yeah, there's some different theories, and it's interesting, just different angles that they brought up here. I think overall, though, I think the reason why I bring up kind of Paul Graham is that in order to understand Tesla, you've got to understand that, first, it's very difficult to make a car company. And what Tesla has done is they've made not just a car company, but they've done it from a different angle, not as a traditional car manufacturer, but really as a software company and kind of like a hybrid, car manufacturer and software company. And that's very, very difficult to copy. People think software is just an add-on, or car companies can do software, but it's not like that. And Paul Graham, he knows software. He's basically helped the thousands of companies, create startups based off of software, and it really takes a focus, and I think that's where I think a lot of people misunderstand Tesla, where they're like, oh, all these other car companies are catch up. How about the e-tron? How about the Jaguar I-Pace? How about Mercedes-Benz, or BMW? And the problem is all these old car companies are stuck in an old platform. They're just kind of mechanical cars, very bad at software. Tesla, though, is building an entire platform off of basically new software. And they're building basically an autonomous transportation network platform, basically a platform on, artificial intelligence driving their cars. And there's not going to be a single old car company that can even compete. So what they're counting on is partnerships with other software companies who could provide that software. Now, that's a challenging, task, because these companies have to agree and have to partner, and some have to work together, and it's definitely like lots of challenges ahead. And I personally have a hard time seeing that they'll be very successful. Maybe there could be some success somehow, but it seems like Tesla has a much better model, a unified, integrated model to provide software and hardware. Not just that, but service and sales and the whole package. And that's what Tesla is going to be riding on for the next 10 years, is this unique kind of like integrated platform of not just car, but of software, of AI, of autonomous driving. And it's going to be very hard to copy. And as the years go by, I think Tesla's going to have an increasingly bigger and growing competitive advantage over time. I think people underestimate the core of what Tesla is and what they're doing. So I'm going to sign off here and see you guys next episode.